Welcome to POUSE around the house. In this video I'm going to show you how I cut and fit a shop bolt blind like this, and throughout the process I'll show you the methods and the tools I use to successfully complete the task. So before we even buy our blind we need to take a few dimensions. If you're fitting your blind inside the window reveals, then you need to take a measurement from one window reveal to the other. This will give you the width of the blind. If you're fitting your blind above the window, you want the previous measurement plus the overhang on either side. Then finally we want to measure the drop of the blind, which is the length of the window from top to bottom. Mine will stop at the windowsill, but if you want yours longer, then account for this in your measurement. Once you've made a note of the measurements you require, you can go to your chosen website. In my situation, I bought my blinds from Dunelm. If you take a look at this drop down menu, you'll notice they all come with the same drop. However, it's the width that changes, so you need to find a blind suitable for your window. To do this, you need to choose a blind that's bigger than the dimensions you need, and that way you can cut it down to size, but there is no point in going too big, or you're just going to be paying money for blinds you're going to cut away and throw in the bin. So in the end, the dimensions I measured for my window were 88 centimeters wide and 128 centimeters drop, which meant the closest size blinds available to me were 91 centimeters wide and 162 centimeters drop as seen here. So back to the job in hand, I take all the parts out of the box. Once all laid out, we find some plugs and screws, the mechanism that allows the blind to be lifted up and down, the handle to wind the mechanism, another insert with spring mechanism to enable the blind to be fitted to the brackets that fix to the wall, a plastic weight that fits in the blind that allows it to hang correctly, the roller blind itself, and a set of instructions. And this particular mechanism is turned around using a metal handle, but if your blinds have a mechanism with a cord like this, don't panic, the general fitting principle is exactly the same. If you've chosen to fit your blind inside the window reveal, you can either fix your brackets up into the top of the reveal like this, or you can fix them into the side of the reveal, like this. To adjust the position of the blind, you can just slide the bracket forwards or backwards before fixing it in place. Finally, we can fit the blind above the window, fixing it straight to the wall. This option allows you more flexibility on where to position the blind, and it also means you can position the brackets so that you don't need to cut the blind down at all. When you measure the blind, you see that it's 91 centimeters as stated on the box, but this doesn't take into account the mechanism on either side, which actually extends the overall length of the blind. So the additional length of both brackets and mechanisms comes to an extra 3.7 centimeters, and it does say this in the instructions. Obviously different manufacturers will have different sizes, but just bear this in mind when you are choosing your blinds. If you've chosen to face fix your blind above the window reveal, then please bear in mind that this does leave a gap behind the blind, allowing light into the room. You can reduce the light exposure by increasing the amount of overhang, or alternatively you can leave the blind at full width, completely eliminating the need to cut the blind down at all. Now you may think to overcome this you could flip the blind around and fix it that way, but unfortunately on most budget blinds like this, the one side will be white and the other side will have the colour, so this doesn't actually work. If you've chosen to fit your blind inside the window reveals, this also leaves a gap, but this time either side of the blind, and this is because of the width of the window mechanism. And finally, one more consideration is, does your window open inwards, and are there any handles in the way when putting the blind down? If the answer is yes to either, then probably best not to fit it inside the window reveal. So now I've decided exactly where I want to position my blind. I now mark 5 centimeters up from the corner of the window reveal. I use a spirit level to ensure my mark is plumb, and then use a pencil to mark it on the wall, and then I measure 5 centimeters to the side of the previous mark and mark again with a pencil. I'm taking my first bracket and holding it the correct way up. I position the bottom corner of the bracket on the second mark I made on the wall. I then use a pencil to mark through the 2 screw holes in the bracket, ready for drilling in a minute. So these are the wall plugs supplied, and if you watch my other videos you'll know I'm not a big fan of the wall plugs supplied with kits like this. From my experience I find they often provide a really poor fixing, so instead today I'm using these Fisher 6mm red wall plugs. In my example I have a masonry wall, so I need to use a masonry wall plug. For this particular plug we need to use a 6mm masonry drill bit. To drill the holes I'm using my Makita cordless drill, and I'm holding the Henry Hoover below to catch all the dust. To make a start on the hole I have my cordless drill on the standard drill setting. Once I created a neat entry hole I can then rotate it to the hammer action setting, and then continue drilling for the full depth of the wall plug. The reason I do this is my house is made of old Victorian brick, which is extremely crumbly, so it's likely to make a mess and too large a hole. Before drilling my second hole I put the bracket back to the wall, lining up the bottom screw hole with the hole I just drilled in the wall. I then place the spirit level on to ensure the bracket is plumb, and then remark the other hole. Whilst this is particularly fussy, it does mean that when I screw the bracket to the wall it will be perfectly plumb and not off to one side. I then repeat the process, and please bear in mind according to what substrate you're fixing your blind to, you may need a different type of wall plug. I've done several videos on using different types of wall plug, and I'll put links to those in the description section below. Please note I'll also put links to all the tools and products used in this video in the description section below. Now if like me you're struggling to get into the brickwork as you can see here, then it's probably best to use an SDS drill as you see me use in many other videos, but if I'm honest, on this occasion I was too lazy to go and get it from the garage. A cordless drill like this will eventually get through the brickwork. There's always a danger that if you drill for too long you'll make that hole slightly too big, resulting in needing a wider plug to fit the hole. So now I take the wall plug we saw earlier, I push it into the wall by hand and then finish it off by tapping gently with a hammer. Then I take the screw provided with the kit, place it through the bracket, into the plug and tighten up using my posi drive screwdriver. And you can see the advantage of using the better quality wall plugs, as that's now a really nice tight snug fixing. So with one bracket now fixed to the wall, I place a mark 5 cm out from the other window reveal. I now place the spirit level vertically off this mark and place another mark 5 cm above, as previously done on the other side of the window. This gives me the rough location for the bottom of my bracket. But to ensure this bracket is perfectly level with the other one, I place the spirit level on the fixed bracket, holding the other bracket underneath until perfectly level. I can now mark out the holes where I need to drill through the bracket. You may be wondering why I do it this way. Well, because my house is extremely old, none of the window reveals are perfectly level, and if I measured off this, it means the blind wouldn't be level either. So by using the spirit level off the other bracket, it's going to be perfectly level. I now continue to drill the holes as seen on the previous bracket. And again, before drilling the second hole, I just make sure that the bracket is lined up perfectly. And at this point, can I just ask that if you are enjoying the video, could you please subscribe to my channel and press that bell icon for regular notifications, as it would really help me out. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments section below and I'll do my best to get back to you. So with the brackets in place, I can now measure the widest gap between the brackets, which on these ones is at the back, and comes to a total of 87.5 centimeters. You need to make a note of that and then roll out your blind on a nice clean floor. So now we take the measurement of 87.5 centimeters, we minus the 3.7 centimeters as it tells us to do in the instructions, and that gives us a total of 83.8 centimeters. And that 3.7 centimeters is simply the combined width of both of the mechanisms between the bracket and the blind. Another way to do this is fix the one mechanism in place and then slightly compress the other mechanism and take a measurement from in between the two, and this will also give you the width of your blind. Once you've calculated the width for your blind, just use a measuring tape and apply several marks of that measurement along the blind. I then use my spirit level as a straight edge and using a pencil just gently marked out a nice straight line from one end of the blind to the other. I did the markings on the back of the blind so not to make any marks on the front, which is the bit that's going to be seen when it's attached to the wall. And because I'm working in a limited space, I just roll the blind back up a bit before I cut it. If you've got plenty of room, then it's probably not necessary. To cut the blind, you can use a sharp knife or a pair of scissors. I opted to use a pair of scissors and just took my time from one end of the blind to the other, following the pencil line that we just drew on the back of the blind. It's important not to rush this bit, so just take your time. And don't forget, I'll put links to all products and tools used in the video in the description section below. And if you have enjoyed the video, could you please give it a like and subscribe to my channel, as it really helped me out. Now when you get to the metal tube at the end of the blind, you're going to need to use a knife. In this case I used a Stanley knife and just cut gently around the blind, removing it from the tube. I found the easiest way to do this was to apply some pressure with the knife and then rotate the tube beneath it. Once you're happy that you've got a nice clean cut through all of the blind, you can then peel it away using your hands. So we now need to cut the metal tube down to size, but the instructions say to leave 5mm protruding from the edge, so I use a measuring tape and mark that with a pencil. To help me cut the tube nice and square, I wrap a piece of insulation tape all the way around the tube at 5mm from the edge of the blind, and as long as I cut down the edge of this insulation tape, I should have a nice square cut. To cut the tube, I'm using my hacksaw with a metal cutting blade. I'll put a link to this in the description section below. However, you could use a junior hacksaw, which is a lot smaller and easier to use. This is what I had available, so it's what I'm using. Now one thing I have to mention here is to place your blind on a soft surface when cutting it, as I actually put a small dent in mine when holding it over the end of the metal carpet threshold you can see in the video, as these cheap shop bought blinds aren't particularly strong and the metal tubes are very thin. I then spent a few minutes afterwards trying to get the dent back out, so just bear that in mind. Once the end of the tube is removed, you'll find it's a little bit rough, so I then used a metal file to deburr the end of the tube. As I was on new carpet, I used some cardboard packaging to place underneath to catch all the metal filings. Then it's time to slowly and evenly roll the blind back onto the metal tube. This took me a few attempts before I got it right, and also my little helper turned up home with a stick poking the blind, which as you can imagine didn't really speed things up. The important thing here is to take your time and roll that blind nice and tight onto the tube, until eventually you have it rolled all the way up. Now I take the winding mechanism and push it gently into the left hand side of the tube. Again, you have to be careful here to apply enough pressure to push the mechanism into the tube, but without bending or damaging the tube. Then I push the other mechanism into the other side of the tube in exactly the same way. Now we can fix the blind into the brackets. To do this, place the spring-loaded mechanism on the right up into the bracket first, apply some pressure, and once that's in place we can click the other mechanism into the other bracket. The spring-loaded mechanism will apply the pressure back and hold the blind in place. With the blind securely fixed, I now take the plastic weight and slide it into the bottom of the blind until it reaches my finger on the other side. I can then take a pencil, mark off the end and cut it down to size. To cut it down I use the hacksaw I used earlier. Then a quick file to remove the rough edge. Now slide the plastic weight back into the blind. Now we're ready to add the handle to the mechanism. To do this, place the metal loop at the end of the handle through the plastic hole on the mechanism, and then when you begin to turn the handle, the blind will start to go down. Just turn the handle in the other direction to put the blind back up. And that is it, job complete. And the one downside of these blinds is they don't have the end caps over the brackets to finish them off, and they don't have the end caps on the plastic weight either. But for a saving of about £140 over the bespoke blinds, I can live with this. Now there may be other shop bought blinds on the market that do have these things included, so shop around and give it a go. So if you've enjoyed this video, could you please give it a like? If you're interested in what I get up to when I'm not doing DIY, you can head over to my other channel, POUSE Out of the House, watch, like, share, subscribe, and finally, if you haven't done so already, could you please subscribe to this channel and press that bell icon for regular notifications. I've been POUSE around the house. Ta-ta, farewell.